Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Colorado LTAP Tailgate Talk. Today, we are talking about trenching safety and excavation and the hazards that go with that. And here's why we're talking about it. Every year, about 5,000 serious injuries and 100 deaths are caused by trenching and excavation cave-ins. The trenches don't need to be deep or large to create a life-threatening hazard because 1 cubic yard of soil weighs about 2,700 pounds, and that's about the size of a small car being dropped on you from about 1 foot above your head. Trenching accidents can be prevented with training and planning. So let's look at some of the issues that go with that. All trenches over 5 feet deep must be protected from cave-ins unless they're entirely built in stable rock, probably unlikely for a lot of you. Trenches less than 5 feet may also require protection depending on the type of soil. So soil type is important, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. The key to preventing cave-ins is good planning. Planning and evaluation of shoring, sloping, trenching, whatever type of system you're going to use must be performed prior to the start of work by a competent person. Trained in soil analysis, use of protective systems, and the requirements of applicable standards and regulations. So this is competent person training is specific to the type of job you're doing. So there's competent persons for confined space, there's competent persons for trenching and excavation. So there are competent persons for specific tasks, and they are specially trained in the hazards of those tasks and the regulations that go with it. So the competent person has special authority to stop work when unsafe conditions arise or are present. That's what sets the competent person aside from everybody else. Without proper planning, the temptation will be there to make do, and that'll lead to shortcuts. So here's a tip for all of you out there. Do not take shortcuts with your crew. Get the training, do the planning, and keep everybody safe. If you or your crew have any doubts about about the safety of any slope, shoring, benching, trenching, stay out. Don't go in. Entering an unprotected or improperly protected excavation may be the last thing you ever do, so don't make that the case. The first step in the planning process is to evaluate the need for trenching, shoring, or sloping. The competent person should conduct this evaluation, and it should be an evaluation of the soil. They should recommend the correct type of protection from a cave-in and apply the proper standard according to OSHA 29 CFR 1926 subpart P. That's important, and I'll give you all of that at the end as well. Always get a call before you dig or a locates ticket before work begins, and never start digging without knowing where all of the utilities are located, underground as well as everything overhead. And have a spotter if you're up there, if you're out there doing anything with overhead work, particularly if you've got booms or arms that are lifted up. Mark the area to be excavated and clear the area for the placement of excavated materials. So here's a little bit more about soil. There are four types of, basically these are the four types of soil that you might encounter. So there's stable rock, natural or solid material that stays intact. There's type A, which is previously undisturbed cohesive soil with an unconfined compressive strength greater than or equal to 1.5 tons per square foot. Now there's a lot of technical information up here, but this may be something you have to look up later, or your competent person should at least know about. Um, Type B soil is unconfined compressive strength of less than a half ton per square foot, or greater than 1.5 tons per square foot of angular gravel, silt loam and sandy loam, and in some cases silty clay loam and sandy clay loam. Type C. Now type C is probably the one that you should remember the most, and you should probably use protection for type C most of the time. This is unconfined compressive strength less than a half ton per square foot. And this is the same granular soils, including gravel, sands, loamy sand soil and soil where water can flow freely. So this is could be damp areas, could be places where water collects, but this is the most this is the type of soil that you need the most protection for. So for most of you out there, unless you have some type of torsion shear penetrometer or some other device that will determine the type of the type and strength of the soil wall, assume you're working in type C and use type C protection, which is trench boxes, sloping, benching, shoring. Trench boxes, this is a picture of a typical looking trench box. This is a wide one, but it's a good size one. They should extend at least 18 inches above the hole when they're set. And if the hole is more than 5 or 6 feet deep and left for an extended period of time, you should put fall protection around the perimeter. And you can see here in the picture the barricades off on the side that they probably put up at night when they leave that open. Excavated material should be, again, placed at least 2 feet from the edge of the trench or excavation. Any closer, and the material would add pressure to the walls, increasing the likelihood of a cave-in. No one should be working on the sides of sloped or benched excavations unless the workers at the lower level are protected from falling material. So no one should be working around that with material that could fall down into the hole. Take precautions to ensure that traffic or vibrating equipment nearby does not cause a cave-in, and keep both as far away as possible. Resist the temptation to get your equipment just a little bit closer because this will be the outcome. Don't do it. Try not to straddle the ditch as you're digging it. Some excavators will put their machine tracks or wheels right on both sides of it. And work along it, that's not a good idea. It's just not worth it. So resist that temptation because a cave-in will not give you any warning. It will just happen instantly. And it usually or can be caused by groundwater. That is a common cause of collapse in any trench or excavation. The competent person on the job should keep all people out of the trench or excavation where water is accumulating until some kind of precautions can be taken to protect them. And this could include anything from pumping, shoring, or using lifelines or harnesses if the work has to be done in those conditions. But most likely you won't put anyone in there in that case. So under no circumstances are workers permitted to be under loads handled by lifting or digging equipment. They must stand away from the loading or lifting activities. Right? Nobody should be in that hole while that bucket is lifting or pulling material out of there. So trenches that are 4 feet deep or deeper must have a means of exit within 25 feet of the workers, right? So this means every 25 feet, or rather every 50 feet, you'll probably need a ladder or some means of exit in there. Most of you will use ladders for entry and exit, but that could include anything from a ramp or even just an open end. So if the end of your trench is 25 feet away from, the rest of it, that can count as an exit as long as it's within 25 feet. Ladders, if you're using ladders, they should extend at least 3 feet above, like it shows here in the picture, above the surface of the excavation and be tied off to some type of fixed object. Most of you will be trenching in holes that are, probably 25 feet or less, and one ladder will usually be enough. But if you do anything longer, like you see here in the picture, you will need to station them at least 25 feet from the workers. So again, we were talking about sloping, benching, shoring, that type of thing. And here's another picture that shows some of that activity. You can see that the truck actually goes down into the trench, so you need something bigger. And most of this is done by a professional engineer to design these types of sloping, benching, shoring systems, and some of these trenching systems, depending on the size of it. Uh, Again, avoid straddling, and this is a good picture of one of those excavators that has straddled the ditch. If you're at the end, and your tracks are over solid ground and not on the walls of the ditch, it's probably okay, but this is clearly not, and this is a situation to avoid. Um, Instead, try to keep your equipment, again, at least 2 feet off, and here's a good picture of where they are just sort of moving their way down the excavated area. All right, so here's a checklist for you all to sort of remember and take a look at. Before trenching begins, check the type of soil and the condition, check the proximity to overhead utilities and to, make sure you get a locates or a call before you dig ticket. Check the surrounding area for any disturbed soil, trees, boulders, or other hazards, things that might fall in or you could encounter something beneath the soil. Check for all required equipment and make sure that it's all there, including any PPE, any shoring materials, any signs, machinery, barricades, whatever you're going to need to get the job done that day, including all safety apparatus. During the trenching activities, make sure you check for any changing ground conditions. Check for potential oxygen deficiency or gaseous conditions, right? Are you working around an area where there's a lot of, exhaust or anything like that? Make sure you're aware of what's going on there. Check adequacy of shoring or sloping as work progresses. Make sure that your system is still working. Check for all your required exit points. Make sure those ladders are up or that your people are still able to exit in case of emergency. Check all parts of the protective system and the connections to it. Make sure that they're all still working. And then monitor all vehicular and machinery operations and the patterns of operation to make sure that they're not entering or exiting an area that would cause um, any undue pressure on the walls of your trench. So during open trench work, again, monitor the banks, the open sides, the walls, the water, the vibration, anything that's going on around or within the area. Monitor those entrances and exits. Monitor any heavy equipment and moving vehicles near the trench area. Check that the excavated materials, again, stay 2 feet from the trench opening. Monitor any cross bracing or jacks to prevent sliding or falling or kickouts. After the trench work is done, backfill as soon as possible, remove any debris, and restore the area to as much as possible its original condition. And I just want to put this last slide in here. Now, I really want to show this because just to impress upon all of you the importance of trenching safety, here's a short story that we can really all learn from. So this is a photo that was taken just following a 22-year-old worker who was killed in a cave-in. He was buried up to his shoulders and he remained trapped for almost 5 hours. 5 hours up to his shoulders, right? So his head is still exposed. Um, and here's about a fact about cave-in rescues. The workers, the rescuers are just as likely to be killed um, or just as much at risk if they jump in and try to dig you out. So it takes time to excavate the victim safely, right? So this is a really sloppy work area. And you can see there's no clear delineation between the excavation and the rest of the work that's happening here. It looks poorly set up, poorly set up shoring and benching. It's not consistent with any of the regulations that are out there. Just not a safe place to have this activity going on. And now you might be asking yourself why he died if he was only buried up to his shoulders, right? If his head is still exposed and he can still take in air, um, how did he die? Well, remember how much all that dirt weighs when it's pressing on you, about as much as a small car. And when your lungs are being squeezed by all that pressure, you just can't inhale. So even though his head was exposed, his lungs were still being pressed by all that dirt. Um, it's a horrific way to die. It's just not something you want to see, not something you want your crew to experience. So trenching and excavations are serious business and they can be deadly if you don't take them seriously. So some key points to remember. Um, you must be a competent person. There has to be a competent person on the site. You must use protection for holes deeper than 5 feet. You must get a call before you dig ticket. You must monitor those conditions. You must keep equipment away from trenches to minimize vibration. You must monitor water seepage and you must maintain the integrity of the trench box, the slope, or the benching. For more information on this, you may go to osha.gov sites, files for hazards of excavations and any training that may be in there, and you will see all of the material that I used to create this today. So thank you for, again, attending the LTAP Tailgate Talk, and I hope you found the trenching and safe the trenching safety topic helpful and that you incorporate this into your daily routine. I always like to tell you guys, you've heard this from me all the time, that we're not doing this because things might happen. We're doing it because they have. And these are the lessons we've learned. Don't let your crew learn the hard way. We know how to protect ourselves from this. So take the lessons we've learned to heart and employ them in your work every day. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you at the next Tailgate Talk.